Morning class. So, nandito na tayo sa chapter 4 ng ating module. So, the chapter is about the accounting for service business. Okay, so before we start discussing the chapter, so let's just have a review on the types of business activities performed by business organization. So, we have three basic types of business activities performed by business organizations. We have service companies, merchandising companies, manufacturing companies. So, ano nga ba yung ginagawa ng mga service companies? So, service companies perform services for a fee. Ang binabayaran natin sa kanila ay yung mga services nila. So, this includes accounting firm, law firms, and laundry shops. What we pay are their services. Ang isa pang halimbawa niyan ay yung mga salon, mga nagbibigay ng services like haircut or hair rebond. Okay. Then, we have merchandising companies. Ano nga ba yung merchandising companies? So, merchandising companies purchase goods that are ready for sale and then sell them to customers. So, this includes clothing stores and supermarkets. So, in short, sila yung tinatawag nating buy and sell companies. So, ang ginagawa nila, bumibili lang sila ng goods that are ready for sale and then binibenta sa end user. And then, manufacturing companies. So, manufacturing companies buy materials, convert them into products, and sell the products to other companies or to the final consumers. So, this includes clothing manufacturers and auto manufacturers. So, ang ginagawa ng mga manufacturing companies, bumibili sila ng raw materials, kino-convert nila itong raw materials ito into saleable products, and then, they sell these products into final consumers or to resellers or to other companies. Okay, so, ang una nating i-discuss na process of the accounting is for service companies. So, we have here the basic steps in the accounting cycle. So, we have here 10 steps in the accounting cycle. So, 3 of these steps are done during the accounting period. 6 of them are done at the end of the accounting period. And the last step is done at the start of the next period. Okay, so ang unang-una is the identification of events to be recorded. So, meron tayong pinagbabasehan when we identify the events to be recorded. Okay, so ano nga ba ang basic steps sa transaction analysis? How do we analyze transactions? Okay, first is we have to identify the transaction from source documents. Ano ba itong mga tinatawag nating source documents? So, source documents are original. Okay, source documents are original. Take note, original and written evidences containing information about the nature and amounts of the transaction. Ano yung mga example ng source documents? We have here deposit slips, official receipts, delivery receipts, marami pang ibang source documents. Mula dito sa source documents nito, you can verify the amount of the transaction and the details of the transaction. Okay, so after identifying the transaction from source documents, we're going to indicate the accounts affected by the transaction. Okay, when you identify the accounts affected by the transaction, so usually, the accounts affected is seen on the problem itself. So, makikita nyo sa bawat transaction kung ano yung account title na gagamitin. So, you have to identify whether it is an asset, a liability, an equity, income, or expense account. Okay, so after identifying the type of account, if it is an asset, liability, equity, or income, or expense account, you have to identify if each account, if the accounts affected is increased or decreased by the transaction. Tatanungin niyo yung sarili niyo, nadagdagan ba yung account na to o nabawasan? And from there, gagamitin nyo na yung rules of debit and credit. Ano ba yung rules of debit and credit? Okay, you have to determine whether to debit or to credit the account to record its increase or decrease. So, i-review nyo yung rules of debit and credit. Saang side ba nag-i-increase? Kapag nag-i-increase ang isang account, saang side nire-record? Kapag nag-decrease, saang side nire-record? We have already discussed the rules of debit and credit from the previous video. Okay. So, meron tayong tinatawag na journal. So, after identifying the transaction, we're going to write the transaction in the journal. But before that, ano nga ba yung journal? So, itong journal na tinatawag natin is a chronological record of the entity's transactions. Okay. Pag sinabi natin chronological, ang ibig sabihin nito ay sunod according to date. Okay. Tandaan, according to date. Okay. So, as the transaction occurred, inire-record siya sa journal. So, a journal entry shows all the effects of the business transaction in terms of debits and credit. So, dito natin nire-record yung mga debit and credit entries natin sa journal, bawat transaction. So, each transaction is initially recorded in a journal rather than directly in the ledger. Hindi natin siya agad-agad nire-record sa bawat isang ledger ng account. Nilalagay muna natin siya dito sa tinatawag natin journal. Kaya nga ang journal ay tinatawag din na Book of Original Entry. Bakit Book of Original Entry? Kasi dito natin lahat nire-record muna initially ang mga transactions. So, the nature and volume of transactions of the business determine the number and type of journals needed. So, marami tayong tinatawag na journal. May general journal, may special journal. Okay. So, the general journal is the simplest journal. Ano nga ba ang format ng ating journal entry? So, ito ang example ng ating journal entry. Okay, yun yung ating example ng journal entry. Ano ang nilalaman ng ating journal entry? Unang-una, the date. So, meron tayo date. So, we are particular with the format of the journal. So, unang-una, merong year of the transaction, and then month and the day of the transaction. Okay, so in this column, dito naman inilalagay natin yung account titles affected and the explanation for each transaction. O katulad nito, merong debit entry and the credit entry. So, take note that the credit entry is slightly indented. Yung debit entry is written on the leftmost part of the column, and then the credit entry is written na naka-indent. Okay, so i-indent natin yan and ilalagay lang natin sa baba ng credit entry yung short explanation, just a short explanation of the transaction. And then we have here the column PR. Ano ba yung PR? Tinatawag natin ito posting reference. Dito natin inilalagay kung anong ledger, anong page sa ledger, or anong ledger, anong account number yung pinag-postan natin ng transaction. So, later on, we will discuss posting. And then, we have here the debit column. Dito natin ilalagay kung magkano yung amount debited. And dito naman sa credit column, ay dito natin ilalagay ang amount credited. Okay. So, ipakita ko lang sa inyo yung tinatawag nating two-column journal. So, ito yung ginagamit nating journal. Meron tayong okay, so ito yung example ng isang 2-column journal. Actually, mahaba ito. Ito ay 12-column journal, kaya lang hindi ko na makita yung aking sample ng 2-column journal, so nag-improvise na lang ako. Okay, so ito yung actual na journal. So dito, makikita natin yung ating column headings. Okay, so ito yung date, the account titles and explanation, posting reference, the debit amount, and the amount to be credited. Okay, so para sa amount to be credited, isinusulat natin ang digits dito sa mga lines na to. So magtataka kayo, bakit may mga blue and red lines? Okay, so ilalagay natin dyan yung mga place values ng amount. Halimbawa, dun sa example is 250,000. So we write 250,000. Okay, ganito siya sinusulat. So may silbi yung mga guhit-guhit na yan. Okay, 250,000. So, itong part na to is for the centavo, and itong part na to is for the million part. Halimbawa, 12,250,000 ang ating amount. 12,250,000. Okay, so, we write the million amount here nang hindi na nakahati-hati ang digits. And then, for the peso part, for the centavo part, kung walang centavo, lalagay lang natin siya ng guhit. Or kung meron namang centavo amount, ay inilalagay natin siya ng ganito. Kaya baka 50 centavo. Okay. 12,250,050 pesos. Okay. So, yan. Ganyan natin isinusulat ang mga amount sa journal. Okay. But in the actual work setting, hindi na tayo gumagamit ng ganito. This is just to teach you on how to use the columnars or the journals. Okay. So, ganyan siya isinusulat. And the credit entry, halimbawa, ito ay 250,000, then this is written like this. Okay? Okay, so this is the format. So dito natin ilalagay yung account to be debited, which is cash. Okay, so take note on how we write cash nasa leftmost part, and then the account to be credited naka-indent, and the explanation is written sa baba. Initial investment. Take note that the explanation should be short, concise, but precise. I mean, dapat kumpleto pa rin ang information. So, initial investment would suffice. So, para lang malaman natin that this 250,000 is the initial investment of the owner. Okay, so before we write the next transaction, we leave one space. Okay, kung halimbawa, ang next transaction is on May 2, ilalagay natin dito, May 2. And take note that we do not write the month. Hindi natin sinusulat yung May dito. Understood na pag naglagay na tayo dito is that's also for the month of May. Okay, so dito natin isusulat yung susunod na transaction. Okay, so meron tayong tinatawag na simple and compound entry. Okay, ano ba yung simple and compound entry? Ang simple entry, only 2 accounts are affected. Okay, only 2 accounts are affected. One account is debited and the other account is credited. Okay, so take note that sa rules ng double entry system, ang rule ay 2 or more accounts are affected by each transaction. Hindi pwedeng isang account lang ang affected. Okay, then we have the compound entry. Ano naman itong compound entry na to? I'm sorry, mali lang yung spelling. That's compound. Compound entry. 2 or more accounts are required in a journal entry. The entry is referred to as compound entry. So, kapag lumampas sa dalawa ang accounts affected, then that's compound entries. Kasi ang requirement is 2 accounts ang affected. Okay. Then, we're going to discuss the second step. So, what's the second step? Transactions are journalized. Okay. So, after transactions or events has been identified and measured, pag sinabi natin measured in terms of financial capacity, financial, ano yung amount ng transaction. So, it is recorded in the journal applying the rules of debit and credit and the double entry system. So, ito nga yung mga rules ng double entry system. 2 or more accounts are affected by each transaction. Hindi pwedeng isa lang, hindi pwedeng debit lang, hindi pwedeng credit lang. Kailangan may isang debit at may isang credit. At least, may isang debit, may isang credit. Pwedeng dalawang debit or isang credit, or isang debit, dalawang credit. But, the sum of the debits for every transaction should always equal the sum of the credits. Okay. The total debits should always equal the sum of the credits. The equality of the accounting equation is always maintained. Yung equality ng accounting equation, ano ba yung accounting equation natin? Asset is equal to liability plus owner's equity. Okay, laging tally yan lagi. Laging na-maintain niya equality. Okay, so let's discuss some sample transactions. So, meron tayo dito mga sample transactions. Get your module and refer to the transactions on page 27. Okay, so on May 2021, so Eliza Diaz is a social entrepreneur from the South. So, she is into a lot of interesting causes. Her fine taste is preeminent, such that she is considered an authority in planning weddings. So, upon the advice and prodding of an esteemed colleague, Maria Concepcion Manalo, Diaz decided to organize her wedding consultancy. So, she invested 250,000 into this entity. Okay, so how do you analyze the transaction? Nadagdagan ang kanyang assets. Anong type of asset? So, dahil nag-invest siya ng 250,000, nag-deposit siya in the account of the business, nadagdagan ang kanyang asset in the form of cash. And because she invested into the business, then na-establish din yung owner's equity account. So, nadagdagan yung ating owner's equity. Okay, so we have cash as the account affected, and then we have Diaz capital. Okay, saan nanggaling yung Diaz capital? Remember that capital accounts ay nilalagay natin sa apelyido ng may-ari. Kaya siya ay Diaz capital. Okay, so applying the rules of debit and credit, identify muna natin kung anong type of account ang cash. So, cash is an asset account, and Diaz capital is an owner's equity account. Okay, so dahil sa analysis natin, nadagdagan ng cash, and ang Diaz capital ay nadagdagan din. Okay, so we will apply the rules of debit and credit. So, kapag ang cash, lagi nating iisipin yung asset is equal to liability plus owner's equity. Okay. So, dahil ang cash is an asset account, remember, na lahat ng nasa left side ay debit at lahat ng nasa right side ay credit. Okay, so because cash is an asset account, which is on the left side of the equation, ang rule sa debit and credit, kapag nag-increase ang asset ay sa debit side nire-record. So therefore, this is to be debited. And dahil ang owner's equity ay nasa right side, ang ibig sabihin nun, ang normal balance niya ay credit. Anong ibig sabihin kapag nadadagdagan siya ay sa credit side? Okay, so there you go. Meron na kayong debit at meron na kayong credit. Okay, so we're now going to write the journal entry for the transaction. So what's the journal entry? How do we write the journal entry? We debit cash in the amount of 250,000 and we credit laging unang isinusulat ang debit class laging unang sinusulat ang debit entry, and then we have Diaz capital 250,000. So as you can see, nasa leftmost part ang debit entry, naka-indent ang credit entry. And then we're going to write the short explanation, which is initial investment. Okay. So take note that yung credit entry ay naka-indent and the amount to be credited. Okay. Next transaction. The next transaction is rent paid in advance. Okay, so rent paid in advance. So on May 1, rented office space and paid 2 months rent in advance. So ito yung tinatawag nating mga prepaid expenses. Bakit siya tinawag na prepaid? Kasi nakalagay ay in advance. Okay, so ang ating mga clues ay makikita din sa ating problem. Okay, so when you see the word paid, ang ibig sabihin niyan ay may kinalaman yan sa cash. Tandaan ha, ang ibig sabihin ng paid ay may kinalaman sa cash kasi sa Tagalog yan ay binayaran. Okay, so meron tayong ang unang account affected ay cash, which is an asset account. And then, ano pa yung isang account affected? So, when you pay your expenses in advance, it becomes an asset. Remember? Okay, so prepaid expenses, sila yung mga expenses na hindi mo pa nagagamit pero binayaran mo na. So, dahil binayaran mo na, nagiging asset na siya para sa business that you can use in the future. So, meron tayong tinatawag na prepaid rent. Okay, so marami pang klase ng prepaid expenses. Nakalagay naman yan dun sa atin sa module. Okay, prepaid rent is also an asset account. Ngayon, i-analyze natin kung yung cash ba at yung prepaid rent ay nadagdagan o nabawasan. So, yung ating asset na cash, dahil tayo ay nagbayad, of course, siya ay nabawasan, decrease. And yung ating prepaid rent, dahil nagbayad tayo in advance, ay nadagdagan ang ating asset. Okay, so ano ang rule natin? Kapag nadagdagan ang asset, recorded by debits. And kapag naman nabawasan ang asset natin, ay nire-record natin sa credit side. Ang normal balance ng asset ay debit. Kapag nadadagdagan siya, sa debit side, nire-record. Kapag nababawasan ay credit. Katulad nito. Okay, so ang gagawin natin ay i-record natin sa journal entry. Okay, so we have Una muna nating susulat ang debit entry, which is prepaid, rent, and then credit entry, cash, in the amount of, how much is that? 8,000. Paid, short explanation, paid 2 months rent in advance. Teka, ilagay na pala natin to dito sa ating journal. So, para dire-diretso na. I-rewrite ko lang, ha. Okay, so ayan na. Naisulat ko na yung first two transactions. So, remember na sa pagsulat natin sa journal, hindi na tayo naglalagay ng comma. Okay? Then, the next transaction is note issued for cash. Okay, so Eliza Diaz issued a promissory note for a 210,000 loan from Metro Bank. So this availment will be used for the acquisition of a service vehicle. So the note carries a 20% interest per annum. So the arrangement with the bank is that both the interest and the principal are payable in full in 1 year. Okay, so ano ang effect ng transaction? So, nangutang siya, so therefore, madadagdagan ang kanyang liability. So, sa pag-identify kung anong liability ang ating gagamitin, so, maging maingat tayo if there is a promissory note issued. So, most probably, so that's a note payable. So, we have here the accounts affected is the note payable. And dahil tayo ay nangutang, may natanggap tayong cash. So notes payable is a liability and the cash is an asset account. Okay, so dahil ang ating cash, which is an asset, ay nadagdagan dahil tayo ay nangutang, nakatanggap tayo ng cash, and ang ating liability ay nadagdagan din. Okay, sa rules of debit and credit, kapag ang liability ay nadagdagan dahil siya ay nasa right side of the equation, nilalagay siya sa credit side. Nire-record siya sa credit side. And ang cash, kapag nagdagdagan, because that's an asset, which is written on the left side of the equation, so, siya ay sa debit side, nire-record. So, how do we prepare our journal entry for this transaction? Okay, so, debit muna ang ating isusulat, which is cash, for, how much is that? 210,000. And notes payable na 210,000. So, ang explanation natin is acquired bank loan. Okay, so isusulat natin siya dito sa ating journal. Notes payable. I'm sorry. Mali pala. Ang debit entry pala ay cash. Cash and notes payable 210,000. 210,000. Next transaction. So, on May 2, hired an office assistant and an account executive, each with a 7,800 monthly salary, or each is to receive 300 per day for the 26-day work month. No entry is necessary at this point, so they started work immediately. So, you don't have to make a journal entry for this transaction since the employees will just start their work today. Okay, so, but the information is very important when you're going to record their salaries when they are paid. Okay, so the next transaction, service vehicle acquired for cash. On May 4, acquired service vehicle for 420,000. If the transaction is not specified, if it is acquired on account, then it is assumed that the transaction is acquired or the service vehicle is acquired for cash. Okay, so what are the accounts affected? So we have cash and kung ano yung binili, service vehicle. Okay, so usually the accounts affected ay makikita sa transaction mismo. Okay, service vehicle. So, anong type of account ng service vehicle? That is an asset account. Cash is also an asset account. So, you have to identify if the accounts affected increased or decreased. So, service vehicle, dahil acquired, ibig sabihin, kumuha or bumili, then it is assumed that the service vehicle account increased. And then, yung cash, dahil tayo ay nagbayad, binayaran natin yung cash ng cash ang service vehicle for 420,000, then it is assumed that cash has decreased kasi nagbayad. Okay. So, sa rules of debit and credit, kapag ang asset ay nabawasan, ay nire-record natin sa credit side, and kapag nag-increase naman siya ay sa debit side. So, that's the rule of debit and credit. So, how are we going to write the journal entry? Okay, so our journal entry will be, uunahin muna natin ang debit. A debit to service vehicle and a credit to cash for 420,000. Okay, 420,000. And then, lalagyan natin ng explanation. So, the explanation will be acquired service vehicle. Okay. Next transaction. So, insurance premiums paid. Okay, so on May 4, wait lang, ilalagay pala muna natin yung May 4 transaction dito sa ating journal. May 4. So, what's the transaction? Cash, debit to service vehicle. And the credit to cash for how much? 420,000. Acquired service vehicle. Okay. So, next transaction is on May 4. Paid Prudential Guarantee and Insurance Incorporated, 14,400 for a 1-year comprehensive insurance coverage on the service vehicle. Okay, so 1 year. So, this is another example of a prepaid expense. Insurance is an expense for the business. But, paying in advance for 1 year becomes an asset. Ang tawag doon ay prepaid insurance. Katulad nung kanina sa prepaid, rent. Binabayaran in advance. Pero as time goes by, kapag naubos na yung months covered, then it becomes an expense. Okay. So, merong dalawang accounts affected. Prepaid, insurance, and dahil sa word na paid, it is assumed that it has something to do with cash. Okay, so cash is an asset account and prepaid insurance is also an asset account. So, ang prepaid insurance natin, dahil nagbayad tayo ng for 1 year, so therefore, nag-increase siya. And ang cash natin, dahil tayo ay nagbayad, remember na when we pay, nababawasan ang ating cash. So, cash decreased. Okay. So, sa rules of debit and credit, kapag nadadagdagan, ay nire-record sa debit side. And kapag nababawasan naman, ay nire-record sa credit side. Okay. So, what will be the journal entry? So, unahin natin yung debit entry, which is prepaid, insurance, and credit to cash sa halagang 14,400. Okay, so paid 1 year insurance. Okay, so doon sa journal entry, lilipat natin ito sa ating journal. Okay, so ito yung ating journal entry. Nilipat na natin sa ating journal. The next transaction, so on May 5. On May 5. So, on May 5, acquired office equipment from Fair and Square Emporium for 60,000. Okay, for 60,000. Paying 15,000 in cash and the balance next month. So, a compound entry is needed for this transaction. Okay, so, anong accounts ang affected? So, bumili daw siya ng office equipment, nagbayad ng 15,000 in cash, and yung balance sa 60,000 ay babayaran next month. Okay, so, ano yung mga accounts affected natin? Of course, dahil nagbayad ng 15,000 cash, may effect siya sa cash. And then, bumili ng office equipment. So, that's one account. Okay. So, ano pa yung isang account affected? So, dahil sabi ay babayaran daw next month yung balance. Ibig sabihin, nagkaroon ng accounts payable. Nagkaroon ng utang. Magkano ang utang? Yung balance sa 60,000 minus 15,000. So, that's 45,000. So, meron tayong accounts payable. So, isa sa mga accounts affected ay accounts payable. So, cash is an asset account. Office equipment is also an asset account. And accounts payable is a liability account. So, identify natin kung nag-increase o nag-decrease para may apply natin yung rules sa debit and credit. So, cash, dahil nagbayad, nabawasan ang cash ng 15,000. So, nag-decrease. And yung office equipment, dahil bumili tayo, nadagdagan naman siya. Okay, and then, accounts payable, dahil nangutang tayo, nadagdagan ang ating utang, so nag-increase. Okay, so i-apply natin ang rules of debit and credit kapag nababawasan ng ating cash sa credit side natin nire-record. Kapag nadadagdagan naman siya ay sa debit side. Okay, and then ang liability, dahil nasa right side siya ng equation, kapag nadadagdagan siya ay credit side. Okay. Ano ang ating journal entry? Okay, unahin natin yung debit entry. Office equipment. Dahil yun, debit. Magkano ang halaga ng office equipment? Acquired office equipment from of course, ang cash ay nabawasan. And the accounts payable, dahil tayo ay nagbayad ng pagkakautang, ay nabawasan din. Okay, so sa rules of debit and credit, ang liability kapag nababawasan, nire-record natin sa debit side, and ang asset kapag nababawasan, nire-record natin sa credit side. So the journal entry is accounts debit to accounts payable and a credit to cash. And the explanation is settled accounts payable partially. Okay, so isalin natin siya sa ating journal. So, pag nilipat natin siya sa journal, ito na siya. Debit to accounts payable and credit to cash. So, as of this time, na-maintain pa rin natin yung equality of the debits and credits. Okay, next transaction, on May 10, coordinated and finalized simple bridal arrangements for 3 couples and collected fees of 8,800 per couple. So services include prospecting and selecting the church and reception location, couturier, caterer, car service, flowers, souvenirs, and invitations. Okay, so nakakolekta siya ng 8,800 para sa mga services na nagawa niya na. Okay. So, nakatanggap siya ng 8,800. So, ano ang accounts affected? So, dahil na-render niya na yung services niya, so, meron na siyang magre-recognize na tayo ng revenue. Okay, magre-recognize na tayo ng revenue. Why should we recognize revenue? The revenue recognition principle states that revenue should be recognized when goods are delivered or services have been rendered. So in this case, the services have been rendered on May 10. So we're going to recognize revenue. So there is an effect in cash dahil nakasabi ay kolekta tayo. And for the revenue, meron tayong consulting revenue. Okay, so consulting revenue is just one example of revenue accounts. Okay, so revenue accounts ay isa siyang owner's equity account na income account siya. Okay. So, ang cash natin is an asset account. Okay. So, dahil tayo ay nakakolekta tayo ng 8,800, sabi, collected fees of 8,800 per couple. So, ilang couple yon? 3 couples. So, kukunin natin yung kung magkano yung 3 couples sa tag 8,800 each times 3 is 26,400 yung amount. Okay, note lang natin ng 26,400. Okay, so yung cash natin dahil nakakolekta tayo ay nag-increase. And yung ating consulting revenue dahil kumita tayo or nag-render tayo ng service, of course, nadagdagan ng ating kita. Okay, so ano ang rules of debit and credit? Kapag ang asset ay nadadagdagan ay debit. Kapag naman ang income ay nadadagdagan, then it's recorded on the credit side. Okay. So, ano ang ating journal entry? Ang ating journal entry ay debit to cash and credit to consulting revenue for 26,400. Okay, so the explanation would be rendered services for cash. Okay, so that's the explanation. Next transaction. On May 13, paid salaries for 6,600. So, the entity pays salaries every 2 Saturdays. Okay. So, dahil may word na paid, okay, isa na naman sa accounts affected ay cash. Okay. Then, ano pa yung isang account na affected? Salaries. Okay. So, we have salaries expense. Okay. So, anong type of account ang cash? Of course, it's an asset. Salaries expense is an owner equity account na expense type. Okay, so, nadagdagan ba o nabawasan ang ating cash? Of course, dahil sa word na paid, siya ay nabawasan. Nag-decrease. And then, yung salaries expense natin, dahil nadagdagan ang ating expense, okay, nadagdagan siya. Dahil nagbayad tayo at nadagdagan yung record ng ating expense, so increased siya. Ang rules of debit and credit, kapag ang asset ay nababawasan, of course, it's a credit. And ang expense accounts, kapag nadadagdagan ay debit. So, what will be our journal entry? Debit to salaries expense and credit to cash na 6,600. Okay, ang explanation niya ay paid salaries. Balikan natin yung entry kanina sa May 10 transaction. So, hindi na pala natin siya lipat sa journal. So, ito na siya. So, debit cash, so 26,400 and a credit to consulting revenue for 26,400. Okay, now, ito namang May 13 transaction, ililipat naman natin siya, yung journal entry natin sa ating journal. So, on May 13, salaries expense, cash for 6,600. Okay, so meron akong mali. So, this should be 6,600. Okay. Next transaction. On May 15. May 15, the entity is earning additional revenues by referring consulting clients to friendly hotels, caterers, printers, and couturiers. So, receive 10,000 advance fees for 3 clients referred. Okay, so, unearned revenues. Bakit unearned? Bakit tinawag siya na unearned? Kasi nakolekta na pero hindi pa nakakapag-render ng service. Hindi pa nakakapag-render ng service. Okay. So, dahil may nakolekta, receive 10,000, so that has an effect on cash. Okay, so unearned revenue, the other account affected is unearned revenue. So these unearned revenues are revenues na nakolekta na or nabayaran na sa atin ng customer pero hindi pa na tayo nakakapag-render ng service. Kaya siya ay unearned. Ang revenue kasi ay na-earn kapag nagre-render ng service. So, unearned revenue is actually a liability account na ipaliwanag ko na to dati sa ating lesson. So, unearned revenue, because it is a liability account, mayroon tayong obligation na mag-render ng service in the near future kasi bayad na tayo. Okay, so yung cash natin is an asset account. So, nadagdagan ba o nabawasan ng ating cash? Of course, nadagdagan kasi nakakolekta tayo. And, ang liability natin, nadagdagan ba o nabawasan? Nadagdagan din kasi upon receipt of the payment, nadagdagan ang ating obligation to render service. So, sa rules of debit and credit, kapag ang asset ay nadagdagan, that's recorded on the debit side. And kapag ang liability ay nadadagdagan, that's recorded on the credit side. Okay. The journal entry is cash, mauna ang debit entry, and unearned revenue for 10,000 pesos. Then, ang explanation is collected advance payment for services. Lipat lang natin siya dito. Hindi pala natin nalagyan ng explanation kanina. So, paid salaries. On May 15, meron tayong debit to cash and credit to unearned revenue. Explanation, collected advance payment for services, 10,000 pesos. Next transaction, so on May 19, coordinated and finalized elaborate bridal arrangements for 3 couples and billed fees of 12,000 per couple. So the amount of the transaction is 36,000. 12,000 times 3. Okay. So when you see the word billed, ibig sabihin yan hindi pa nababayaran. Okay. So nag-render siya ng service, pero hindi pa siya nababayaran. So dahil nag-render na siya ng service, magre-recognize na tayo ng revenue. So, ang effect niyan ay sa consulting revenue. Okay. Dahil hindi pa siya nababayaran, so, when you render services, dalawa lang yan. It's either babayaran ka. So, when you render service, it's either babayaran or uutangin. And babayaran at a later date. So, kung babayaran ka, pag nag-render ka ng service, laging kung ano yung income account na gamit mo. So, sa case natin, sa transaction natin, that's consulting revenues. And kapag babayaran ka, may effect sa cash. Kasi madadagdagan yung cash mo. Or kung uutangin naman, ang tawag dun ay accounts receivable. Ano ba yung accounts receivable? Utang sa atin ng customer na in the near future ay makokolekta natin. So, in effect, these are all assets. So, tuwing magre-render ka ng service, titingnan mo kung binayaran or inutang. So, pag binayaran, ang kapartner ng revenue account ay cash. So, kapag inutang, ang kapartner ng consulting revenue, accounts receivable. So, in either case, laging consulting revenue ang isang accounts affected. Malalaman nyo lang kung cash or accounts receivable, kung binayaran or hindi. So, in this case, dahil hindi siya binayaran, accounts receivable ang isang kapares. Accounts receivable. Okay, anong type of account ang accounts receivable? That's an asset account. Consulting revenue is an owner's equity account in the form of income. Okay, so dahil nag-render tayo ng service, nadagdagan ang ating income. And yung ating accounts receivable, dahil nagpautang tayo, nadagdagan din. Okay, so ang asset kapag nadadagdagan ay sa debit side, nire-record. Kapag ang income account ay nadadagdagan din, nire-record din siya sa credit side. So, ang ating entry ay debit to, wait lang, journal entry. Debit to accounts receivable, credit to consulting revenue. And the explanation would be rendered services on account or on credit. On account or on credit, it's just the same. Okay, so isalin natin to entry na to sa ating journal. So, dahil puno na yung una nating journal, so ito actually yung page 1. Page 1 ng ating journal. So, dito na tayo sa page 2. Okay, so puno na kasi siya hanggang dulo. May entry na hanggang dulo. So, ito na yung page 2. So, take note na sa page 2, inilalagay ulit natin yung year and yung month. Okay, then yung date ng transaction, May 19. So, ang entry ay debit to accounts receivable and credit to consulting rendered services on account for 36,000 pesos. Okay. Next transaction. So, the next transaction is withdrawal of cash by owner. So, Diaz withdrew 14,000 for personal expenses. So, this is by far the easiest transaction. So, when you see withdrew, it is always related to cash. Okay. So, ang ibig sabihin nito, nag-withdraw ng investment niya yung owner. So, nabawasan ng ating cash. Okay. So, yung and then, kung meron tayong capital account na nakapangalan sa apelyido ng may-ari, meron din tayong withdrawal account. Diaz withdrawals. Ano ba tong Diaz withdrawals na to? So, yung withdrawal of cash by owner is actually a deduction to the owner's equity. Deduction nyo sa kanyang investment. Pero, hindi natin siya direct na ibinabawa sa capital. Inilalagay natin siya sa isang account na tinatawag nating Diaz withdrawals. And at the end of the accounting period, kapag nagpe-prepare na ng financial statements, ipinabawas lang natin siya sa capital. Pero, accumulating siya. Okay, so meron tayong effect sa cash and the other account is Diaz withdrawals. Okay. Iisa lang lagi ang entry dito. Okay, cash is an asset account and withdrawals is an owner's equity account under the withdrawals. Okay, so i-analyze natin kung nadagdagan ba o nabawasan ang ating accounts. So sa cash, dahil nag-withdraw, nagtanggal siya ng expense ng investment niya, so nabawasan, decreased. And ang ating Diaz withdrawal, dahil nag-withdraw siya, nadagdagan. Okay, increased. So sa rules of debit and credit, kapag ang cash ay nababawasan, nire-record natin siya sa credit side, and kapag ang withdrawal naman ay nadadagdagan, nire-record natin siya sa debit side. Okay, withdrawals, ang normal balance ng withdrawals ay debit. So, ibig sabihin ng normal balance, kapag i-increase yung account na yun, doon sa side na yun, nire-record. Okay, so ano ang ating journal entry? Unahin natin isulat ang DS withdrawals. Credit to cash, 14,000. Ang explanation dyan ay withdraw cash for personal use. Okay. So, next transaction. Expenses incurred but unpaid. Exchange of claims yan. Okay. So, on May 3rd, wait lang. Isusulat pala natin siya dito sa ating journal. So, pag sinulat natin siya sa ating journal, ganyan ang journal entry. Okay, next transaction. So, on May 30, received the ICC buy and sell telephone bill of 1,400. Okay, so ito yung mga expenses. Ang pagkakaiba lang nito, unpaid pa siya. Ibig sabihin, meron tayong liability. Okay, so on May 30, anong accounts affected? Sabi, telephone bill. Telephone bill, so that's utilities expense. Utilities, kasi may mga company na ang ginagamit nila for telephone and communication expense are utilities expense. Okay, and then we have utilities payable. Bakit payable? Kasi unpaid pa siya. So, ibig sabihin, nagkaroon tayo ng liability. So, this is a liability account. This is an owner security account expense type. Okay. Nag-decrease ba o nag-increase ang utilities expense? Of course, dahil na-incur natin, nag-increase ang ating utilities expense. Ang utilities payable naman, dahil nagkaroon tayo ng utang, nadagdagan din ang ating utang. Okay. Ang liability sa rules of debit and credit, kapag nadadagdagan, ay nire-record sa credit side. Walang expense sa rules of debit and credit, kapag nadadagdagan ay debits. Okay, so ang ating journal entry. So yan ang ating journal entry. Debit to utilities expense and credit to utilities payable. So pag nilipat natin siya sa ating journal, okay, so eto na siya pag nilipat na natin sa journal. Ang journal entry for May 30. Okay, next transaction. Meron naman tayong transaction for May 30. Receive 24,000 from 2 clients for services billed last May 19. Okay, so meron daw tayong billing ng May 19. Ito yon, kung saan nag-render tayo ng services for 3 couples na 12,000 each. And hindi tayo binayaran, inutang yung ating services. So dito sa May 19, kung makikita nyo, nag-record tayo ng accounts receivable and nag-record din tayo ng revenue kasi nag-render tayo ng service. Ngayon, pagdating ng May 30, naka-receive daw tayo ng 24,000. Dalawa dun sa 3 kliyente natin ng May 19 ay nagbayad ng 12,000 each. Okay, so ibig sabihin, nabawasan yung ating collectible. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Nabawasan yung ating kukolektahing utang. Okay, so ibig sabihin, nabawasan ang ating receivable. Okay, so dahil naka-receive tayo ng 24,000, so mayroon siyang effect sa cash. And ano pa yung isang account na affected? Accounts receivable. Okay, so ang accounts receivable, it could be written as AR lang ha, ganyan lang, AR. Pag accounts payable naman, AP. Okay, so anong type of account ang cash? That's an asset account, and accounts receivable din is asset account. Okay, so kapag binabayaran ng ating pautang, pag binabayaran tayo ng ating customer, nababawasan ang ating accounts receivable. So, decrease. And kapag nakakakolekta tayo ng bayad, nadadagdagan ng ating cash. Okay, so sa rules of debit and credit, kapag nadagdagan ng cash ay debit, kapag nabawasan ang asset account ay credit. Okay, so ating journal entry is, so yan ang ating journal entry. Ang explanation natin is collected partial accounts receivable or partial collection of accounts receivable. So, nilipat natin siya sa ating journal. Ito na ang ating journal entry. Okay, last transaction. Okay, so expenses incurred and paid. So, ito naman, ang kakaiba nito. Ito, sa May 30, nag-incur ng expenses or ng mga gastos pero hindi pa nababayaran. Ito naman, nag-incur ng gastos pero binayaran na. Okay, so ito ay May 30. So on May 31, settled electricity bill of 3,000 for the month. Okay, settled electricity bill. Okay, so ang ating effect ay cash kasi binayaran, settled. Binayaran na ang electricity bill na 3,000 pesos. And then, utilities expense. Okay, so ang utilities expense ay owner's equity, expense type, and ang cash is an asset account. Nadagdagan ba o nabawasan ang cash? Dahil tayo ay nagbayad ng electricity bill, nabawasan ang ating cash. Ngayon, ang utilities expense, dahil nag-incur tayo ng expense, nadagdagan ng ating expense. Okay, sa rules of debit and credit, kapag ang asset ay nababawasan, nire-record natin sa credit side. And kapag ang expense ay nadagdagan, nire-record natin sa debit side. So, ang ating journal entry, okay, so yan ang ating journal entry. Debit to utilities expense and credit to cash. So, pag nilipat natin siya sa ating journal, ito yung ating entry. Okay, so, yan na yung tinatawag nating journalizing. Okay, ano ba yung journalizing? It is the recording of transactions to journals. Okay, so that's the first step in the accounting process. Okay, so ito na yung first step natin into making our financial statement. So after recording the transactions in the journal, so ito na yung ating output, yung journal. Ay, sana. Okay, so ito yung ating output. So meron tayong journal entries. Okay, ito. Yan ang ating mga journal entries. Okay, so ito yung page 1 and then ito yung page 2. Okay, so after that, ito total natin ang total debits and total credits. So, kailangan magtali yung total debits and total credits. So, after totaling, ang total ng ating debits and credits and 1,111,800. So, kinalculator ka na yan. So, nagtali naman siya. So, 1,111,800. Okay. So, kapag tali siya, don't forget to put a double rule. Okay. So, ibig sabihin yan, that's the total. Okay. So, remember that the total debit should always equal the total credits. Pag mali, there is something wrong with your journal entries, with your amounts. So, you have to review. Okay, so, after recording the journal entries, okay, ililipat naman natin siya sa ating ledger. So, ano ba yung ledger? So, ledger is the grouping of the entities accounts. Ang tawag dun ay ledger. So, although some firms may use various ledgers to accumulate certain detailed information, all firms have a general ledger. So, a general ledger is the reference book of the accounting system and is used to classify and summarize transactions and to prepare data for basic financial statement. So, the accounts in the general ledger are classified into two general groups. Yung balance sheet accounts or permanent accounts and income statement or temporary accounts. Okay, so yung ledger, para siyang T-account. Para siyang T-account na bawat isang account ay mayroong sariling ledger. Although mayroong mga special ledger, so mayroon tayong general ledger. Yung general ledger, yun yung mga ledger sa mga typical accounts na ginagamit ng isang company. Okay, so nakagroup yung ledgers na yan, sama-sama yung mga balance sheet accounts. Ano ba yung mga balance sheet accounts? Yung asset, liability, and owner's equity accounts or yung capital accounts. And then nakahiwalay din or sama-sama yung nakagroup yung income statement accounts. Ano ba yung mga income statement accounts? Mga income accounts, income or revenue accounts, expense accounts. O yan, nakahiwalay yung income and expense accounts. Okay. So, bakit tinatawag nating permanent account yung balance sheet? So, ang permanent accounts kasi ay nag-accumulate lang or hindi sinizero pagdating ng end of the month or at the end of the accounting period. Samantalang, ang temporary, from the word temporary, pagdating ng end of the accounting period, lahat ng balances sa income statement accounts ay nililipat natin sa isang account which is called the income summary. Kaya siya tinatawag na temporary account kasi pagdating ng end of the month, nazi-zero yung balance niya. Nililipat sa income summary accounts. Okay. So, sabi nga, each account has its own record in the ledger. So, every account in the ledger maintains the basic format of the T account but offers more information. So, marami siyang laman. Yung account number ng entry na yon, journal reference column. So, kumpara sa journal, ang journal ay record ng lahat ng transaction. Ang ledger, nire-record niya lang kung ano yung transaction doon sa account na yon. Okay, so ito ang example ng ledger. So, ang ledger na to is for the account of the cash. Nakalagay dito kung anong account number. And then the date, the explanation, and the reference. Kung anong page ng journal siya naka-record. So, mamaya, sa susunod na nating video, ipapakita natin kung paano ang posting. Okay, so ito yung tinatawag nating journal reference. Okay, so dito natin makikita kung saang page sa journal nakalagay yung ating entry na to. Okay, so dito sa ledger, naka-indicate kung ano-ano yung mga movements doon sa account ng cash. Okay, with the corresponding dates and explanation. Lahat ng mga companies, meron tayong tinatawag na mini-maintain nilang charts of accounts. Ano ba tong chart of accounts na to? So, yung chart of accounts ay listing siya ng lahat ng accounts na may account numbers sa ledger. So, yun yung charts of accounts. Naka-arrange ito. Remember that there is an arrangement or order ng pagkaka-arrange ng accounts sa ating charts of accounts. Una, yung mga assets, then liabilities, then owner's equity or yung capital account, and then income and expense accounts. Yan lagi ang pagkakasunod-sunod ng mga account titles natin sa ating charts of accounts. So, when analyzing transactions, the accountant refers to the charts of accounts to identify the pertinent accounts to be increased or decreased. So, kapag nag-analyze tayo ng transaction, doon tayo tumitingin sa ating charts of accounts sa kung ano ang dapat natin gamiting account title. Okay? So, that will be the end. The next video will be about posting the journal entries to the ledgers. So, ang gagamitin natin sa pag-post natin ng ledger is the account. So, ang gagamitin natin transaction is ito pa rin ginamit natin for the tawag dito, for the journalizing. So, although meron lang tayong idadagdag na ilang transaction. Thank you for watching.